everyone. Once again, we're going to have a very interesting lecture and learn about what's going to happen to the United States in this next year. Given the fact the inauguration was yesterday, I think it's going to be interesting to all of us to see how this new change in history is going to affect us. And the person who is going to give us guidance through this is a person that we all know and who has certainly been around for a long time. His name is Gary Gnomes. And please, Gary, and Gary, go on and explain to us what is going to happen in this next year, because lots of us are interested.
Okay, Phyllis, thank you very much. First of all, I thought I'd give a background of some of the techniques I'm going to use for the chart interpretation. So if the Don can show the slideshow, I use a variety of techniques when I'm looking at a chart. Most of them are we can go to the first slide, Don. That'd be great. Okay, all right. Now, the special techniques, I don't want to overemphasize. A lot of these special techniques, I tend to gravitate much more to the simple special techniques because I tend to think very simple in a very simple and straightforward fashion. I'm not claiming I'm any better or any worse than any other astrologer, but I tend to like these because they speak clearly to me.
Okay, that's fair.
So,
and they are?
Okay, and essentially they're a combination of Parashari techniques with Nadi, which is actually embedded in the Parashari tradition, and some Jaimini techniques. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. Now, so essentially there are several parallels between Jaimini and Nadi astrology, which I won't go into great detail here. We'll save that for another presentation. But both techniques use Vargas for a predictive system. Jaimini uses it for certain aspects of life. Nadi has a neat way of folding charts into each other. Essentially, they're chart overlays, so you can get a lot of subtlety using that particular Nadi technique. We're not going to be covering that today, but I'm just saying that's one of the nicer features of it. Use of unconventional chart construction and interpretation. Nadi, you can take relationships between planets as opposed to even having a lagna in place, and Jaimini has special aspects. But again, keep in mind, I was trained as a Parashari astrologer first. That's my first point of reference. That's what I always go to first. And methods and specialized techniques for predictions. Jaimini is fascinating in that if you read different translations of the Jaimini Vedesha Sutras or the Jaimini Sutras, however you call them, there'll be some which are very they blow the tradition wide open, and Arangati Rangacharya brings up certain special techniques which are really fascinating. And there are exceptions to standard rules in classical astrology, and we'll be talking about this one in particular, especially Sandhi Grahas. Sandhi Grahas are not necessarily inauspicious in these systems of astrology. So that's essentially planets at the end or the beginning of a sign. They're not necessarily bad placements. Nadi is a refinement of classical Parashari, Brigu, and Jaimini charts, but it's also an independent system. We go to the next slide, please.
Sure. So Gary, one question. So basically when you talk about Sandhi Grahas, you're basically saying the planets which are at 29 degrees, 30 degrees, 1 degree, 2 degree, right?
Yeah. There are special exceptions for those planets, especially in Jaimini.
Okay.
And so in particular, in Jaimini astrology, planets at very high degrees become special because they're usually the Atmakaraka planet, and the Atmakaraka planet by itself holds a lot of power.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a weak planet. Put it that way.
Sure.
All right. The United States chart in your head, what we're going to be doing is looking at the Gemini Caracas in the U.S. chart, mixing the Nasirgika, I'm probably not spelling that correctly, but essentially the fixed Caracas and the movable Caracas. Gemini likes to use movable Caracas in the U.S. chart. The U.S. chart using standard Parashari techniques. And I'll have a general discussion of interpreting charts that extend beyond 120 years of the Vimshottari Dasha system. There's some controversy about that. And in some ways, I'll discuss how the U.S. is going back to the 50s, but it's also going back to a time when great changes occurred in the society. Okay, so you can go ahead. All right, and I'll also explain how the U.S. chart is at a special juncture, and an explanation of what happened the last time such junctures appeared, and special transits in the U.S. chart. Okay, and do we have any more? All right, and we'll select Vargas in the U.S. chart. Now those will manifest this year. And I think we have one more. All right, so again, this is a little bit repetitive. And dashas, this is something which is actually, I ran across by accident. So the first three bullets I've covered before, but dashas themselves, and you folks are probably familiar, some folks are probably familiar with this already, but I actually came across this technique by accident when I was teaching a student from South America once. He came to visit me, and I was fooling around with charts, and I was saying, I wonder if the dashas I wonder if it's permissible to use the start of a dasha to give the effects of what happens during that dasha. And be around, and I used it, I applied it on my own charts and a few other charts, and I said to myself, God, my gosh, this works. This really does work. Mm-hmm. And then lo and behold, I pulled out one of Mr. Patel's books, C.S. Patel's books on Nadi Astrology, and like middle of the way through the book, he said, you can also draw up a chart for the dasha at the start of the dasha. And I'm like, I thought I discovered something, and the more you get into this kind of stuff, the more and more you find out you haven't discovered anything. Almost anything you could think of has already been done, basically. But it made me feel good because I'm really a big fan of C.S. Patel's, and I really admire his work. Okay, all right. So let's go into the charts themselves, because I think that's what. Do we have any more slides? We're done.
Yes, sample chart.
Oh yeah. So what we're going to be looking at is the U.S. chart and Donald Trump's chart, but I'm going to be focusing on the inaugural chart because the inaugural chart has some of the special conditions that we were talking about just now. So let's go over to the U.S. chart, and this will be my screen, and I have to figure out. Okay, so
share. You see where it says share? Yep. Share screen.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. So this is the United States chart. The data that I use, it's a derivation on the Jim Kelleher chart, the chart that Jim Kelleher developed many years ago. And he said the birth time as being July 4th, 1776, 6:30, roughly 6:30 p.m. in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. There are other charts which have their merits. I can remember one gentleman is what's called a Scorpionic chart, which essentially took the founding of the Constitution. But I always felt like the Declaration of Independence was actually the start of the country. You can take the Articles of Confederation and use that as a starting point. You can take the actual Constitution and use that as a starting point. But essentially, the United States as an entity, I think, started on July 4th, 1776. Essentially, the other things were like modifications to it. Maybe like growing pains of the baby, for lack of a better word. So in the U.S. chart, we have this very interesting phenomenon. So the U.S. chart, if we look carefully using at the chart, we see a mutable a largely mutable chart. Okay, so this is, so essentially all but two of the planets were immutable, or I'm sorry, all but three of the planets were immutable signs, right? So we have this cluster of planets in the seventh house. Mars is very low degree. The Amakaraka planet for this chart seems to be, interesting enough, Saturn, because Saturn is the highest planet regardless of sign. Okay, so next highest is Sun, and that's the career planet. So it's going to be a strong government. But if Saturn's the Amakaraka planet, that tends to give an inherently conservative societal structure. At least from what I've seen, this isn't a society. It's adapted to change relatively rapidly. But if you look at our Mahadashas, if you look at the United States Mahadashas carefully, you can see we were just in a Mars Mahadasha we just entered a Rahu Mahadasha, which I'll talk about more in a second. But we were in a Mars Mahadasha. Now, if we go back just a few years, it's that, and this is one of the reasons I love this chart so much. Okay, I'm going back. I'm going back to the start of the Mars Mahadasha. Now, interestingly enough, the Mars Mahadasha starts on September 27, 2008. Okay, what's significant about that? Well, I seem to recall that there being this huge financial collapse in October of 2008. Mars is a planet of partnerships, and it's the Dark Karaka planet. So in this case, the Dark Karaka planet rules the 12th house. It's a house of loss. Is aspected by all these other planets, so it'll still give foreign involvement. So it'll still give a lot of involvement with the world. It's in a trine from the moon. The moon Mahadasha, we were all over the place. We were just everywhere. Now the moon is in Aquarius. My moon's in Aquarius, but it's an isolated moon. So this is also important to recall about this chart. Now, the United States is not a poor country. There is a Jupiter aspect which saves the moon. But this is really sort of a Malakama Druma Yoga. So the tendency of the United States, the natural tendency of the United States is to be us first. That's just natural tendency. That's not something that they learned. And its natural tendency is to be us first, but contrarily outward looking, because it's Saturn, and because of Saturn, it wants everybody else to be like it. Okay, it's a conservative planet. It's not a tolerant planet like Jupiter is or Venus is. It wants everybody else to be like the United States. So there are certain empire configurations in this chart from the very beginning. Okay, there are certain needs to be basically in charge from the very beginning of the chart. And Mars Mahadashas, if you look back in history, one of the reasons, we'll talk a little bit in advance about this, one of the reasons I like the 120-year Mahadasha scheme is because if we look back to earlier Mars periods, we see in similar periods, if we go back to, let's say, the 1880s, late 1880s, when the last Mars period, you had deflationary real estate trends, you had stock market panics, you had all the same things you see happening in the United States in the late aughts and in 2010 and beyond. The next thing of it is, though, at least from this chart, we have a Rahu Mercury combination in this chart. So we're in a Rahu Mahadasha, but let me just stay on that topic for a second. So Saturn, there is no escape from Saturn almost anywhere in this chart. Okay, Saturn rules the moon sign. Saturn aspects the 7th house in this chart, but through both Parashari and Gemini aspects. And Saturn overall, I know some of you don't have the Navamsha done in North Indian style, but I can do that pretty quickly. Hold on a second. Let's see, I don't want to do that. Okay. All right, terrific. So we have Navamsha in the North Indian style. It's kind of small print, for which I apologize. But basically, all these charts have this very Saturnian quality to it. The only one that doesn't is Rahu, but Rahu itself is like Saturn, right? That's one of the significations of Rahu, and Rahu is ruled by the moon, which is in a Saturn-based sign. So if you want to go to follow dispositorship in the chart, this chart is a Saturnian chart. So it's good for agriculture, great for tradition, not really so good for tolerance, not really so good for a lot of things that we've been known for. But if we go back to our classics, Mars is a liberal planet. If you go back to the Bhrigu Sutram, Mars is known for being thin. It's being known for being liberal. Even though it's militaristic, and it's being known for essentially breaking things down or breaking barriers down. Ketu likewise is similar. And the last time the United States was in a Ketu Mahaja was in the 60s, in the 1960s. And it was a very disruptive period for those of you who were alive in the United States at that time. And I think we felt more strongly like the country was coming apart then than we do now. So essentially what happened, well, Saturn got the upper hand. We ended up electing a more conservative president in Richard Nixon, essentially a repressive presidency. And he shut that stuff, to use the lines of a character in The Walking Dead, he shut that stuff down real fast, okay? It's, sorry to quote a comic book, but basically, we're having the same kind of reaction. So we have a liberal period. We had this Mars major planetary period, and then so all sorts of boundaries break, especially sexual boundaries break in the society. So with the advent of gay marriage and a variety of other things, we have a lot of the liberal agenda gets essentially pushed through by Obama by mandate, not by vote, to be honest. And so you have this, what I would call it an expected reaction from what I've seen in United States history. So it goes just so far in this direction, then all of a sudden we'll go like back again. We'll spring back again, and it's almost like so you'll see progressive and conservative trends happening in a lot of societies. With this chart, the progressive trends are only going to last for a little while. Then they'll become institutionalized, and then you'll see, quote unquote, a revolt against, so people will want change. I don't think it's any accident over the past two administrations that you had people basically coming, or the last two presidents, you had people who essentially came out of nowhere. Okay, so Barack Obama was only a senator for 2 years when he ran for president. But he was more appealing than the person who was supposed to be the presumptive candidate in 2008, which was Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton runs again this year. The field is clear, and she almost gets taken down by an elderly senator from Vermont, one of the smallest states in the country. It was I think in terms of the chart, it was not her time. It was more her time in 2008. But the weak sun in her chart, I don't want to digress too much to Hillary Clinton's chart, but the weak sun in her chart made it almost, I think, almost impossible for her to become president. And not because, I don't think, I mean, certainly there may be an element of misogyny in the U.S. chart, that it does look like a very masculine chart. But I don't think that was really the cause here. I think it was more, let's put it this way, if the country is going in this very liberal direction and the economy is finally starting to recover after all this time, but we still have a lot of men, a lot of traditional wage earners who feel left behind, or a lot of traditional culture that feels left behind, then you're going to have, quote unquote, a kind of an uprising. Because we're in a Rahu Mahadasha, and because Rahu overall is very strong in this chart, there'll be a reaction. Your Rahu's right by the middle of the sign. This is essentially, and if you look at the Navamsha chart, this election was more about money than anything else. And I'm not talking about people buying the election. I'm talking about people being able to support their families and being able to and remembering a time. Our Mercury Mahadasha, our last Mercury Mahadasha, was the 1950s. It was a relatively prosperous time for the United States. Since the 1970s, every decade has shown a widening and a disparity in income. This may be an illusion because Rahu deals in illusions, but they want to recover something from this Mercury Mahadasha. And I honestly think that's what happened. It doesn't matter essentially Trump won by targeting voters who were frustrated. Whether or not there's scandal connected with the election, we're in a Rahu Mahadasha. There are going to be all sorts of claims about the legitimacy of this election. And if we look at this next year, because we have Rahu in the 9th house in this chart by transit, you're going to see these protests go on at least until next fall. Okay, so you're going to see the kind of protests you saw right after the election occurred. It's going to go on at least before that. But these protests started in a different vein in the Obama administration. They didn't start right when Trump with Occupy Wall Street and with other things. You had rising dissatisfaction. Rahu also generates a concentration on foreigners or on foreign influences, right? So essentially, this entire Mahadasha is going to be about. It's going to contain a certain amount of xenophobia. It's also, if you paid attention to the inaugural speech, which we'll get to in a second, you have a lot of distrust, a lot of paranoia, which Rahu is also in charge of, but also a lot of return to isolationism, which the United States hasn't really been. It's been a world player since the end of World War II. There is a certain element of truth in what Trump says, in that we've neglected infrastructure for a long time. We've neglected our own best interests. Now, the factual thing is the amount of gross national product we've been giving to other countries is not really all that significant compared to what the United States puts out. But the image, especially during Rahu Mahadasha, the image matters more than the reality. And I think also the militarism that the United States has been involved in over the past 50 years or so is going to somewhat decline. Now, you're probably going to see a return to what I would call quote unquote traditional values, at least during this major planetary period. Not because, but you're also going to see a great deal of technological innovation, because Rahu is a technological innovator. Okay, so technology is going to be quite advanced, quite progressive. If we're talking about the year ahead, just looking at this chart, right now we're in a Rahu Mercury Venus subperiod. Venus is not really weakened in this chart, but it is weakened by transit. Venus right now is next to Ketu, so nobody's happy. Okay, when Venus is hurt, nobody's happy. They may, if Jupiter's in good shape, they may say, well, that's wise and I accept it. But really, the primary indicator in almost every system of astrology about whether or not things are adding up or whether or not they seem just is Venus. And Venus has been under affliction almost perpetually since August. All right, so Venus will finally go to its exalted position at the end of the month, thank God.
Thank God, yes.
And you'll start to see people calm down just a little bit, not quite be so upset. Now, I'm not saying people shouldn't fight for what they believe in. They can definitely fight for what they believe in. That doesn't preclude that. But also, if Venus is weak, it's very tough to get justice in a chart. It's very difficult to get justice or to even get the perception of justice. So right now we're in this. Excuse me. Right now we're not in a Venus subperiod. Let me just correct this. My apologies. This is 12 years ago. So we're in a Rahu Mercury period. So communications are key right now. They're very bad. Around April 25th, you're going to see between April 25th and May 21st, you're going to see a lot of panic, a lot of financial panic in the country. And the main reason for that is because I'm totally convinced right now the economy is doing extremely well. I'm totally convinced as soon as Saturn starts to transit into Sagittarius, some of my colleagues think otherwise, but I've seen these transits before. You're going to start to see a slide in economic indicators. There are already some leading indicators that are going in that direction, but during the Ketu subperiod, you'll see kind of a panic because this guy is not going to do what Wall Street expects him to do. Okay, that's just his nature. He's a bit of a megalomaniac. I'll say that without reservation. His chart shows it. His personality, the way he acts out on TV shows it. But if his Congress doesn't give him exactly what he wants, and they show signs of going back to business as usual, he is going to bust a gut. Okay, and I think overall over the next few months, so you have all of his designees saying no, I don't agree with them. I don't agree with them. I don't agree with them. Ultimately, if he's not going to be above firing cabinet members. Okay.
Say that again, please.
I say he's not going to be above firing cabinet members if they don't do what he wants. Okay.
That's a dictatorship, isn't it?
Yeah. Say that again.
That's a dictatorship?
Well, essentially, any president has the ability to fire cabinet members. The cabinet members serve at the pleasure of the president. That's happened with many presidents. I can think of going all the way back to Roosevelt. Roosevelt fired cabinet members. Lincoln did. It's not unusual. And some people interpreted parts of the Obama administration as dictatorship because he did a lot of things by executive order, mainly because he couldn't get Congress to do anything he wanted them to do.
Well, we understand why.
So essentially, I think it depends on which side of the fence you're on, whether or not you use a dictatorship or as executive privilege.
Okay.
Executive. Nixon saying that the president, Richard Nixon saying the president, it's okay to break the law if you're the president because you're the president. That's a dictatorship. Okay. So Obama didn't break the law. Lincoln didn't break the law. Roosevelt didn't break the law by trying to pack the Supreme Court. It was just a way of trying to get things done. So they didn't go through and say, no, I'm going to do this anyway. They checked with their legal counsel and they checked with people and they were able to do it. more impulsive, but I think especially during this first period of his presidency, up to around June of 2018, you're going to see a lot of unrest, especially between April 25th and June 21st, and we want to break it down more quickly, or more tightly. Excuse me, not more quickly, but more tightly. I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that you're wrong and I'm right, Phyllis, but I just think that there's just.
No, just checking for clarity. That's all.
All right.
I'm sure that that word didn't flash in only my mind.
Oh, I know that, but I think that there's a real misperception. It was funny because the last president I can think of that drew this much ire and opposition, or probably would have drawn as much ire and opposition, he actually became an accidental president, was Teddy Roosevelt.
Yes,
they essentially tried to ruin the Republican Party tried to ruin Teddy Roosevelt's career by making him vice president. And they had the bad fortune that McKinley got assassinated. And as a matter of fact, that happened during the Rahu Mahadasha. Okay, so if you look all through this election, he's working with a party that didn't want him anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there were major Republicans, there were including former presidents who said, "I don't think this guy should be president,"
Mm-hmm.
and he became president anyway. Do you think he feels like he owes them anything?
Oh, I don't think he feels he owes anybody anything.
I don't think so either. And to a very large extent, except for maybe his parents, he's probably right.
That
you know
might be worth a discussion.
So I mean, it's not. And as a matter of fact, something very revealing I saw in a biography of him. He actually attended Norman Vincent Peale's church when he was a kid. He was a member of that parish. Yes. So in some ways, he's the New Age affirmative thinking ideal run amok.
Of whose parish? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking. The grandfather.
Oh, Vincent Peale. Oh,
yeah.
Really? Okay.
The grandfather of affirmational thinking.
Yes. All right. Now I know who you mean. I didn't hear correctly. Yeah.
So Gary, one more question I have. So if we talk about the Russian involvement in the election, can this also be related with this Rahu Mahadasha?
Sure. I think that's something, to be honest with you, I don't think we'll ever really know. What they were definitely involved. There is evidence they were hacking the Republicans too. I think they were hacking it in order to gain an advantage over who won, to be truthful. And they were also hacking out of revenge for Hillary Clinton's comment a few years ago for Putin, because at least in terms of this election, given the transits, so we're looking at the fifth house of politics. Mars is essentially the planet connected with politics in this chart, and Mars was under affliction over the past couple of months, right? Because it was in the same sign with Ketu. So yeah, they probably did it. Trump probably does have ties with Russia, but I don't think they won or lost. They won or would have lost in the election in any event. There were just too many factors working historically to put him into power during this time. And at least so I mean, K2 is connected with spying. K2 is connected with Mars in this chart. He had there was a lot of disruption, but I think in some ways it's hypocritical for the United States to be getting very upset about this, especially with all the elections we've interfered with over the years.
But facts very rarely affect reality.
Well, I, I, I don't know, Pinochet?
Who?
Pinochet in Chile. Essentially, the United States helped stage a coup, which truly.
No, I'm Gary. I live under a rock. I do not keep it as involved with politics or national change as I should. So no, I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm not saying you should, but Grenada was another one. You know, essentially we attacked the country because a communist government took over in Grenada, or a socialist government took over in Grenada. It's just really, the United States is actually engaged in armed interventions in countries where we haven't liked the election outcome.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And we have engaged in dirty tricks before the internet age. So did the Russians do it in this case? Yeah, probably. Did it have any effect on the outcome? Probably not. I mean, essentially what it did was kept a focus on the Hillary Clinton emails, but both sides were keeping that churning because Bill Clinton was talking to the Attorney General of the United States. We had two really unscrupulous candidates running at the same time, to be honest with you, in the U.S. So Hillary, I can't speak about her personal style, but I can speak about Bill's personal style, and Bill's personal styles in elections. Essentially he wasn't the most honest broker either, and also Bill was a minority president as well. So Bill never got a clear. Bill Clinton never got a clear plurality of the votes, or a clear majority of the votes in either of the other races that he ran, because of H. Ross Perot.
Okay, well, let's go back and hear what's going to happen.
Let's go back to the U.S. So I don't want to get involved in the political debate because that's really dangerous. I apologize. All right. So essentially, you have this period right now. So you'll see a little bit of a honeymoon period developing, I think, after around the end of January for this president. I don't think you'll see his approval ratings go up, but there'll be more tolerance. He'll be able to get a lot more of his agenda through, and I think the United States over the next 3 months is going to be relatively placid. I don't think it's going to be very difficult.
Relatively what?
Placid between January 3rd, at least from the chart in April, and after especially at the end of January when Saturn changes signs, and also when Venus moves into Pisces, you're going to see the United States relatively placid for at least a few months. You'll probably start to see a panic or an uproar around between February 14th and February and March 15th, and a kind of a mini panic on Wall Street because of this Rahu indicator down here, this Rahu subperiod. Okay, and also during this time, I want to do one thing. I apologize for doing this in advance because it's a little bit, it's just cheating a little bit, but it might be useful. All right, so the Mars line in the United States runs over the East Coast, so you'll probably see some kind of active terror or active violence, significant active violence around mid-March in the United States. Okay, just because of that short Mars period. Okay, over here. Between February 22nd and March 15th, maybe kind of a mini panic, and also you'll probably hear some more discussion about the Russians during this time because of the spy connotations. But that'll calm down, I think, between March 15th and April 25th. April 25th, you'll see a period of, I would say, extended violence and demonstrations. Mainly because either because of something that happened around between April 3rd, in terms of the United States action, or else because of the leadership in the United States, and that'll be relatively unrelenting until May 19th. After May 19th, it'll start to calm down just a little bit. Okay, but you'll definitely see people worried about losing things, worried about losing money, worried about worried in general. The entire period between June 21st and December 3rd looks okay. It doesn't look spectacular. It looks okay. And that's mainly because you'll have a Venus subperiod coming in around that time. You'll have a relatively people focusing on material gains, material possessions. But keep in mind, Saturn is aspecting Venus during this entire time. So you're going to have, I think you're going to have a lot of activity, a lot of financial despair, because it'll be aspecting the Lord of the 11th house. And you'll also start to see certain anxiety enter into the society, especially over security, especially between August 19th and September 13th. This year is going to be really up and down in terms of finances. I think the stock market is going to be very erratic. And personally, I don't like the fact that Wall Street and the larger economy have become so well integrated. In earlier days in the U.S., there was a joke among economists that Wall Street predicted 13 out of the past 9 recessions. But now that's more true. The Main Street and Wall Street are more intimately connected, but you're going to see a lot of publicity around the presidency, a lot of publicity around foreign alliances, and even more. But I also think you'll see this as a time of both the country and the president trying to calm down and get used to each other. Okay, so I don't think you're going to see a lot. Also, I think during this time you're going to see a lot of focus on people's individual rights, and also on construction between August 10th and October 6th. So you'll see these grand plans being rolled out for an ideal society around that time. Now, there is an eclipse between August 19th and September 13th, right? So actually a little bit earlier than that, around August 15th, right? So there's an eclipse happening this year. It's allegedly right on Trump's rising degree, and everybody's predicting dire things for Trump around this time. I'm actually thinking it's going to have the reverse effect, because his chart is so nodal. Let me just flip to Trump's chart. I'm going to go to Donald Trump's chart for a second, okay? Okay, come on. I want you to work for me. There you go. All right, that's still the United States chart. I have to flip the charts, excuse me, while I work in front of you. All right, so you have, the guy's got Mars affliction, that's for sure, in his chart, okay? So this will be some kind of a crisis in his presidency, but I don't think it'll result. People are predicting he'll be impeached around that time. And they're doing it without any evidence. They're doing it without any evidence of eclipses causing other people to be impeached. So what I'm thinking is that's when you'll start to see him starting to either get rid of people who annoy him in the cabinet, or maybe even shuffle the cabinet around a little bit. And he'll do it more quickly than other presidents will, because he's not used to that kind of, he's impatient. He's got Mars in the first house, right? So he's not going to do it really quick. He's not going to wait a long time to replace people. And so you'll see a shuffle of the cabinet. You'll see maybe some kind of scandal come out of his cabinet, which will reflect badly on him. Maybe he'll have some dealings. Maybe there'll be a reflection of some dealings that he's had or some investigations which will start. But I don't think he's going to be impeached. It doesn't look likely from his chart. He's in a Jupiter Mahadasha. Jupiter is so damn strong in his chart. I think he's going to serve out at least 1 4-year term and possibly go to two full 4-year terms. But unless he just gets tired of it or he gets bored with it. But basically, from this chart, if you look at this chart, he was born under a nodal influence, right? He's got a Sun Rahu conjunction, a Ketu moon. He's just nothing embarrasses this guy. Okay, so if somebody comes up and says, "Oh, you did something wrong," he's going to fight back very quickly and very strongly. Okay, and as a matter of fact, that's his fault as well because he doesn't stop and consider what he says. But I also think the only other leader in the world that I can think of that's quite as unhinged, but this person so unhinged it's not funny. It's the dictator of North Korea, but I think there are already plans to try to take him out by both China and South Korea. And I think over the next year, this is going a little bit off script, I realize, but I think next year you're going to see the president of North Korea depose. So this Venus period will be a time actually of great progress for the country. You'll start to see actually some activities take place that are promised. This administration will not put a great deal of emphasis on human rights, and a lot of protests will come about human rights during that time, particularly around late August, and that may be where you see some of the eclipse affecting Trump. But between October 6th, by October 5th, when the Saturn period comes in, and when he starts appealing to people to give them a chance to make the country powerful again or great again or whatever the catchphrase he's using this, they'll give him another chance. And it's not. I think it's interesting because when I look back at the last impeachment attempt, the one against Bill Clinton, it only made him more popular. So I think there's a sense in the country, in the U.S. You're not in the U.S., Phyllis. I don't think you're.
No, I'm not. I'm a Canadian.
In the U.S., there's a really large sense that the problem is Congress, not the president.
That the what is?
Problem is Congress, not the president.
Oh, that part I'm aware of. Yes.
So he's coming in promising to straighten these folks out. If they get the perception that he's obstructing them the same way that they obstructed Obama, he's going to have a lot of push. Right now he's not popular. That's true. I think a lot of that aura of unpopularity will tend to dissipate in the spring months. The resentment will endure until October, but from the United States point of view, I think you're actually going to see a period around June where people are actually going to start to like him a little bit. And between December, you'll start to see attacks on the government. Let's see if I can move this far up a little bit because I can't see it. Roughly between December of 2000, December 3rd, and December 20th, you'll see a lot of popular discontent with the government, and even some recalls of congressmen. So I don't think he's going to be affected. So the entire next year, like I said, he's kind of he's a very difficult personality. You know, he's a liar, but virtually all politicians are liars. Actually, it's interesting because James Braha had noticed a pattern in politicians' charts for lying, and let's go back to Donald Trump's chart. Let's see if he has it. Let's see, does he have a Mars? He doesn't have a Mars-Mercury combination. Does he have a Mercury K2 combination? Yeah, he kind of does. Mercury is in K2 is in Mercury's nakshatra. Okay, so K2 is in JS nakshatra. So that'll give some proclivity for lying, and Mars aspects to K2. But Mercury itself is really not all that strong. I mean, he actually believes he can bring more wealth to the country through quote unquote through the plan that he's come up with. And I don't know if it's a real plan, but this is an incredibly lucky chart. This is not really an unlucky chart at all by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, Rahu being so close to the sun, is he going to have good judgment all the time? Is he going to be an inspiring leader all the time? Not really. You know, that's sort of his downfall. He can be very nasty at times. So he's not going to be a diplomat. But if we're turning more isolationist, that really doesn't matter. That's really not going to matter, because the U.S. chart for the next 17, 18 years or so is really going to be more inwardly focused. We're in an 8th house Mahadasha. It's an inwardly focused Mahadasha. And we'll be looking to increase our technological position. And it was pretty clear from the inauguration yesterday that it was going to be America first. We weren't going to worry about our relations with the rest of the world. That has benefits to us. Not being isolationist, but being involved with the rest of the world has benefits to us. But also it has deficits to us, and that is during the Bush years we got involved so strongly in regime change. Blatantly involved. We were involved in it before we got blatantly involved in regime change. Okay, so we were sticking our nose in all over the place. Okay, it was almost national policy, and Barack Obama continued that to a certain extent. Now, do you have any questions? Now, this is a very general interpretation of what's going to happen over the U.S. I think in certain parts of the country, let me just go back to this chart again. In certain parts of the country, you're going to have, let me see now. Oh, this is Donald Trump. I'm sorry. Let me get it away from here. This is Donald's chart. Let me swap this back here. Examples. All right, so a Saturn line runs right through Ohio and Florida. Okay. Mars line runs through here. Now, where's our Rahu line? Rahu's over here. We should have another Rahu line somewhere along the way.
Yeah, there is in South America.
Yes. Yep, in North America. There's a Rahu line that runs in Alaska, which explains Sarah Palin a great deal. But essentially, Rahu doesn't involve us with anybody else, not really. So it doesn't mean the United States is going to become a hermit nation, but there'll be the tendency, as existed before World War I, to stay clear of foreign intrigues. And if we do anything, it'll be undercover. It'll be done through the intelligence community. Now, the other thing is, what's come up recently is that Trump, as president, does seem to have an ongoing battle with the intelligence community. You know, he really doesn't like him, and they have a kind of difficult relationship with him. That'll probably be his biggest challenge over the next few years.
Recently, there was also he was also saying that he wants to change the format of CIA and FBI, and he wants to overhaul all these agencies, right?
Yep, and I think that's in part. I won't say it's the reason he's received so much attention from him, but a lot of these bureaucracies. I work in a government bureaucracy myself. I won't say where I work, but a lot of bureaucracies essentially are aimed at self-preservation, and that's especially true when you get to the federal level. So you're probably going to see a lot of contention about that, but it'll be off the radar, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of these agencies right now weren't withholding information on him in the hopes they could use it against him. They seem to. It seems funny that a report that he had been given, that he and President Obama had been given 2 months earlier, all of a sudden popped up right before he was president. So it seems like there's a, I won't say there's an attempt, but there's an attempt to influence him on the part of these agencies right before he comes in.
Gary, you are breaking up.
Yeah, you know, so I said apparently it was leaked by people in these agencies. So I think, and it was right before he was inaugurated. So that's almost like sending a signal that we have something on you. You know, so I think that's probably going to be his biggest struggle. That may be the cause of a lot of what happens between April and May.
I have one more question. Now, if you can go back to chart of the United States, please.
Sure. I'm sorry.
If you can go back to the chart of United States, and if you see the Rahu Venus is going to start in June of 2017.
Yep, and it's
the previous chart, please. United States.
Yep. Hold on a second. I need to flip it. Oh, that's weird. Let me just pull the chart up again.
Yeah, this is right. This is what.
No, this isn't the right chart. Hold on a second. It should be a Sagittarius rising. Something must have changed. Let me get it. That should be the right chart. There we go. Okay, I have it now.
Yeah. So basically what I wanted to ask is, in the June of 2017, Rahu Venus period starts, right? Now, interestingly, there has been a lot of protest about from the women folks, and there has been a lot of concerns about the female population, saying that he may not, this is not our president. So do you think such kind of protests are going to rise when the period of Rahu and Venus comes in, or they are going to subside?
Yeah, but I think it'll come. I think it'll start. I think it'll start to germinate early on, around in June. But I think it'll really come to the fore between August 19th and September 13th. Okay, so it's something. I think there's going to be some kind of accommodation made, or he'll make some kind of accommodation over things like Roe v. Wade, and certain other big issues that are important to the female population of the United States.
Well, his attitude toward women leaves a lot to be desired.
Oh, sure. I mean, he's certainly a male chauvinist, and but I think you're not going to change his attitude. I think you're going to have to change his action. You know, so attitude is one thing, action is another.
Well, it's possible there will be some change.
So essentially, during that period, I think there'll be some kind of compromise reached, because interesting enough, it was Reagan answered with almost the same set of agenda items, with almost an identical set of agenda items, but Reagan was likable, and also 53% of, I think it was 53% of white females voted for Trump. So it isn't like the entire female population of the country dislikes him. He didn't do well among minorities in general. He didn't do well, but white females, he did okay.
Well, I have seen some variation on that. It seems, you know, the percentages come out depending on who asked the question. So we can't quote one as being the authority on what actually happened.
Yep. So it's, well, polling's always a very dicey business to begin with, and as Trump told you, and as he was born out, he doesn't believe in polls either. Okay, but I think that at least from the figures that I've seen, among the white population in general, he did very well. Okay, it was really, or not very well, but better than expected, and
better than one would expect.
Yeah. But also the most recent data I saw, and this was like within the past few days, is where I pulled that number from. I can't remember the source.
That's okay.
But it wasn't from Fox. It wasn't from. I think it was from what I would call a neutral news source, like CNN or
That's okay.
NBC. So it's despite the fact that they're all fake news, according to Donald. And he will have some problems with the media because of the Rahu Mercury conjunction. And like I said, I have no illusion this guy is a nice guy. You know this guy is not a nice guy. He's a businessman. He's used to dealing with people in ways to get what he wants. Okay.
Well, it's interesting that Rahu represents another segment of society besides politicians. And that segment of society is necessary for the politicians as the politicians are necessary for them.
Yeah. And the way I learned Jyotish way back in the early 1990s, Rahu was the masses. Rahu represented essentially the not the elites in society, and it's important to remember most astrological traditions didn't come out. They were adopted over time, but it's important to remember most of these astrological traditions didn't come out to serve everybody. They came out to serve a certain class in society, and so Jupiter and Venus are Brahmins, right? Mm-hmm. Mars and Sun and Mars are Kshatriyas. Mercury is a Vasya planet. Mm-hmm. Rahu's an outcast.
I think there are other terms that can be applied to the outcast as well.
Yeah.
I think we certainly see that representation in the cabinet moment.
So it's going to be those who don't belong, or who even feel disenfranchised. Essentially the ones who've been cut,
Godfather will become popular again.
So essentially, I think you're going to see as much social evolution and as much social change in this next Rahu Mahadasha as you did during the previous one in the late 1890s into the teens, if you go back to the transits, I find it fascinating that Rahu was in, around Roosevelt's time, Rahu was in Aquarius, the last Rahu Mahadasha, because I tracked it back. In this one, Rahu is in Leo. Okay, so does that mean that essentially that the wealthy will gain even more power, or that you'll actually see some kind of overthrow, because Rahu in Aquarius essentially capsized or tried to decentralize power among monopolies. Okay, that was Teddy Roosevelt's big thing. Trump isn't so much interested in that. He's more interested in making it easier for business to come back and function in the United States. So that may mean less government control and quote unquote a tendency to a smaller government. So
and more freedom for Rahu.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So Rahu's deposing the king. You know, so we're not going to be guided by the wise. We're going to be guided by necessarily greedy. Okay, but there may be some. Hopefully, there'll be some benefits to the masses because. But this is a populist president. Make no mistake about this. Marine Le Pen will probably win in France. I looked at the chart of her opponent, and her chart is stronger than her opponent's chart is. So this is part of a larger wave of nationalistic sentiment across the world.
Mm-hmm.
So we've tried being global for a while, and some people don't like it. You know, they're not seeing how it's how it's being advantageous to them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Trump certainly did attract horrible people. Okay, but I don't think that's why he won.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the wonderful things about Jyotisha is that we study and we learn, and hopefully we keep our minds open to whatever options can be. In the United States this year, the little guy and the big guy are going to see changes in their lives, and may we keep an open heart and do the best with whatever faces us during this time.
And let me just look a little bit at the inauguration chart, just for a second, Phyllis. Okay. I'm sorry, this is taking so long.
Well, you're forgiven.
And I don't want to impose on your goodwill, and believe me, this would not be Donald Trump would not be my first choice as president. Okay, I'm kind of a Sanders guy. Okay.
So am I.
All right. So just to be clear and above board.
I'm a tree hugger from the West Coast, Lotus Land,
And I come from a state where 84% of the people voted for Hillary Clinton. So it's really but I've also decided not to get quite so personally upset when the person that I win that I didn't want to win wins. So essentially we have the rising sign. So the sun's in the 10th house. So this is a pretty good combination. This is a good combination for assuming authority. We pick the rottenest time of year, though, to elect our presidents. Have you noticed that? We pick a time of year when the sun's debilitated. So I'm saying to myself, we're not picking the best leaders, but basically, and they'll still have trouble with women from this inaugural chart because of the Venus-Ketu conjunction, right? There'll be trouble now. That first lord in the 12th house, he'll be involved in foreign politics whether he likes it or not. He may even be asked to leave office several times. I don't think this guy is gonna leave unless you essentially get him in a wheelbarrow and cart him out of the White House. I just don't get the impression from this guy. Rahu's in the 5th. It's actually considered lucky to have Rahu in the 5th house. in a sign ruled by the sun. Okay, because Rahu is going to disposit by the sun. He'll lead. He won't lead. He won't be very popular with the people with politicians, because the fifth house is a house of politicians. But he will get things done. Now, whether or not those will be good or bad things, nobody knows. We're going to have to wait and see. Jupiter's in the sixth. Be a hard worker. His partnerships will change. And like I said, I think you're going to see a lot of changes in cabinet officials. I just don't think this guy is going to have a stable cabinet. And that, more than anything else, is going to give Wall Street the jitters. Because Wall Street likes predictability. You know, they like to know who they can fleece for the next 6 months without getting into trouble. All right. So I'm really displaying my prejudices now. Saturn's in the eighth. So Saturn in the eighth as Lord of the 10th, not so good. But Saturn aspects its own house. And Saturn's also the Makaraka planet for this chart. So what does that mean? Okay, how do we interpret that? There's a great deal of bounceability, of recoverability if Saturn's in the eighth house in his Sandhi. And what I mean by that is crisis recovery, crisis recovery, crisis recovery. So he'll be knocked down, but he'll never be knocked out. Okay? At least in this term. I don't think you're going to see. I see a lot of my colleagues predicting he's going to be impeached before he first year. There are some people out there, some astrologers saying, I know he's never going to take office. And I think the problem you run into is whenever somebody you don't like get in, you want to make sure you want to look at the things which will reinforce your case that he's not going to get in or he's going to be a failure. Have problems with debt. Okay.
Are you suggesting that our ego gets in the way?
I am. I really am, because it has in my case, Phyllis.
It goes to prove we're human after all.
I know it's astonishing, but astrologers do have ego.
I know.
It boggles the mind. But yeah.
So much for neutrality.
All right. Well, we all have our own, we're in these frames. We all have our own filters. It's understandable. I'm not saying I'm right. I have my own filter I'm looking at this chart through. Is it possible he'll get thrown out of office? Hell yeah, anything's possible. Does the chart indicate it? Not to my eyes. And I'm not seeing anything really convincing that he's going to have a disastrous. His presidency is going to be so disastrous this year that he's going to be taken out. Even a couple of years down the road, it doesn't look. His Mahadasha tends to. It's too strong. His Jupiter's too strong. But
what is your take on the influence of Yatapati being beside the moon in the seventh house?
Well, it's essentially. Oh, the yogi point, you mean?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was Yatapati. I thought that was an Upagraha.
No.
Forgive me.
It's over here in the third.
Ah, okay. I misread it.
It's no problem. It's probably a small script, but he's got Aruda and Yamakati in the third house, so that'll probably give him good persuasive abilities.
Mm-hmm.
This year.
I didn't mean to open another to the word.
No. Believe me, that's perfectly legitimate. I love the Upagrahas. I think they're very overlooked in chart interpretation because they give subtle colors. He has Indra Chapa and the Pranapada in the eighth house. That gives a great deal of durability and the ability to bounce back from defeat. At least in this inauguration chart. Mercury's in the ninth. fulfillment of desires, he'll probably get through a lot of what he wants to get through. If we use Pluto, and I normally don't like to use Pluto because we have Upaketu there, and that's good enough for me, he'll probably have a lot of protests. Okay, in the ninth house. If I don't need, I never feel the need to use the outer planets to explain anything when I'm doing a daily chart. I'll look and I'll say, oh yeah, that would probably influence it too. But I normally see enough other things in the chart that give the same evidence. That's just me. So I'm not saying they don't have a function, but if I can minimize the amount of factors I'm looking at, it's probably better for my small brain. And overall from the chart, he's in a Rahu Mahadasha. Rahu's at least from this Vimshottari Dasha scheme. And again, it's always a little bit suspect if you do this. But and again, in June through August, a difficult period shows up again. Okay, so we have that Venus subperiod, and especially Venus moon between August 20th and October. And September 2nd to September 15th looks like a really troubling time for him, just based on this inauguration chart. So it kind of confirms what we're seeing in the other charts for him. But overall, it looks like at least from this first year, he'll continue to have problems with women, at least from this chart, throughout his presidency. That's not really going to go away. As a matter of fact, if I look at his birth chart, whenever he has problems, Venus is always the subperiod he's in. He's got Venus in his 12th house with Saturn in Cancer. It's not a good combination. And this is a guy whose chart is really, it's really not. I mean, as you said, Phyllis, he's not well liked by women. He has really bad attitudes towards women. Maybe colored by his own personal experience, maybe colored by his upbringing. I don't know. I'm not a psychoanalyst, but again, women will continue to be very critical of him. So even if he finds a way, even if he finds a way, and interestingly enough, Venus rules over allopathic medicines, at least the way I learned it. So there'll be a lot of activity connected with universal healthcare during his Venus subperiod during that Venus subperiod as well. And this will probably be the time when they try to replace the Affordable Care Act with something else. And that'll probably be done. It's probably taken at least a year to get that done, because they'll have to retain parts of the Affordable Care Act, it seems.
You've given us a good picture, a logical picture of what we're looking forward to.
Well, I think over the next 2 months, we're going to see. This will be his weighing in period up until around. So let's go back to this chart. This will be his acclamation picture. He'll still have protests. Excuse me. I'm really annoyed by this. This computer's too sensitive. I hurt his feelings too much. So up until around from this chart, up until around early March, he'll probably have some problems with protests. Maybe even things getting a little bit out of hand around between March 1st, between February 18th and March 1st. Around April 22nd, we're going to have some financial issues come up with the country overall. So you may see a slight panic during the Saturn subperiod. Boy, this chart is computer sensitive. And during the Venus, but you'll see a lot of legislative action taking place. There'll probably be a lot of efforts to keep it blocked until around June, when the Sun Mahadasha comes in. But he'll get a lot of what he wants done between June 26th and August 20th of 2017. But not medical reform by that time. Not Affordable Care Act reform by that time. That's a complicated act. You're going to have to be really careful how they dismantle it, and they're going to have to be really careful what they put in its place. I don't think that's going to really be resolved for about at least another year. Between August, if that's soon, between August 30th of 2017 and November 2017, he's in a short moon period. And that'll give him some new allies, some new assistance from overseas, maybe even some new advocates. And he'll probably pick up some female support, although of a more conservative nature. But he'll probably pick up some female support during that sub-period. The Venus-Mars period overall, and again, from this chart, the moon is very strong. It's in the middle of the sign. The moon is in the house of status or capability. So although it'll be a wavering period because the moon by nature wavers a lot, it'll still be a time when his presidency is under attack, but it really won't. He'll be able to deflect it pretty easily. Okay.
Well, we know what we're looking forward to now.
Yep.
And I know that the viewers are going to appreciate everything that you have promised or drawn our attention to.
Yeah, but I'm not seeing anything really. I mean, it'll be an adjustment period getting used to this guy. I mean, there was a lot of hate. I'm old enough to remember when Reagan took office, and even when George W. Bush took office, there was a lot of opposition to what they were trying to get through. I don't think you're going to see something like a September 11th attack during this administration, although you may see an international crisis develop around mid-September.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, we've made note of the dates, and we'll look forward to what's coming and know when it's going to end. That's the thing. You know that it can rain, but it's nice to know when the sun's going to shine.
Oh yeah, and I think as the presidency moves forward, he'll probably I mean, the American people aren't stupid for long. They can be stupid for short periods of time, but they're not stupid for long. So if this guy was elected, well, this guy was elected to making certain promises. Right now, the economy's kind of at a peak. He's going to benefit by that going in. But when Saturn moves into Sagittarius, I think you're going to see the economy slowly but steadily decline over the next couple of years.
Well, I'm quite certain that there's more hands at play than ours or Trump's.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Merely a reflection of some unfolding.
Well, I think one of the great illusions. I mean, he ran for president during his Rahu Mahadasha. One of the greatest illusions that a president can have is that he or she controls everything.
Mm-hmm.
No president
Hubris,
ever.
called, isn't it?
What's that again?
Hubris.
Hubris, yeah, yep. And I don't even think that. There's been there's an unfortunate condition, I think, in politics everywhere, that elected officials can solve our problems, and I don't think that's ever been true. I think they can influence things. That much I do believe. You know, they can make things easier or make things worse. Like I think I'll just go back to a personal time. I think Reagan made the 1980s recession much worse than it should have been. But but essentially the trends are written in the stars, or they're written by how people manipulate things. And I think this guy's entered a period which is really interesting for the United States. There's going to be a lot of pressure, a lot of intensity for reform, this is going to be a populist period.
Well,
okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Very much, Phyllis.
You've given us lots to think about, Gary. And I know I'll be talking with you soon. And for your words today, we appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Phyllis. Vidon, thank you very much for your help.
Thank you.
Great, and thank you for nodding and smiling at me. That gave me encouragement. So you could have just been being polite, but I still took it as encouragement. Thank you.
Take care, Gary.
Folks, take care. Nice to see you.